Welcome,
Hello,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you for joining us for the webcast. Does Integrated Human Capital Management Software Pay Off? Sponsored by ePay Systems and moderated today presented by David Creelman and Michelle Lanter-Smith. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this webcast has been pre-approved for IHR certification credits, 1 HRCI Insurance webcast for certification credit, e-learning credit. You will receive an email from HR.com within 1 to 2 business days, which will include the certification credit information. Questions may be submitted anytime during the webcast by typing the question in the Ask a Question text field and clicking Submit, the orange button located on your screen. And I will now turn it over to David Creelman.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Thanks, HR.com, and also thanks the whole folks at ePay who helped us pull this together. Today we're talking about technology, which is a big topic in HR nowadays. Whenever you read about sort of trends in HR or what's top of mind with HR professionals, a big part of it is getting the technology right. And if you get the technology right, that kind of changes the whole focus of HR. We've got a lot less manual work, and things run smoothly, which gives you a chance to focus on the areas that really bring your expertise to the fore, where you have a bigger impact on the organizations. The focus on technology is not just about, well, let's do the technology because it makes our lives easier. It's also because it creates the foundation for us to do something important for the organization. And I think it's really central to the special focus this time. Normally when we're talking about talent management systems or HRIS systems, very often most what you read about is focused on the white-collar employee. And one thing we want to make sure we do today is that we remind ourselves that, in particular, integrated human capital management software can have a big impact on those organizations with a large hourly workforce. So that's kind of a little bit special today. We want to make sure we're talking about the whole workforce, not just your professional salaried workforce. So let me sort of dive in today with our objectives. We're going to do a quick about us, so I'll introduce you to myself and Michelle. We're going to go through the top findings of our study. We're going to focus on the takeaways, and we really want to make sure that we have time for Q&A at the end. And really feel free to ask anything about HR technology that is top of mind. I think we've got a lot to offer, so it doesn't have to be specifically on the findings or the takeaways. If there's some issue that's on your mind, here's a great opportunity. We're sitting here, we've got some experts ready and willing to help you with whatever is on your mind or what you're struggling with right now, and you'll use that question box, and we'll make sure that we get to all the questions. As per usual, the webinar is 60 minutes, and again, for certification, we have 6 final questions for that are multiple choice questions, so those will be right at the end, and Kathy will lead you through that. All right, well, let's dive right in, and I want to introduce you to who we are. That's me on the left, David Creelman. I'm now CEO of Creelman Research, but I think a lot of you know of me with my long history with HR.com, and these days, quite closely related to technology, as I've been doing a lot of work on people analytics. I have my book with John Boudreau and Ravin Jason on the future of work, and my historic work on the relationship between boards and HR. But today, I have with me Michelle Lanter-Smith, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of ePay. And if you read on the right, in addition to her pretty substantial responsibilities at ePay, she's got some pretty neat recognition, I guess, from the industry in terms of her importance as a leading woman in business, a top 100 under 50 from Diversity MBA magazine. So Michelle, tell us a bit about yourself. Seems like you've had an interesting career and some nice accomplishments.
Oh, thanks, David, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As the CMO here at ePay, I have the pleasure of being able to work with our clients and really try to bring the best customer experience that I can to them. My teams are responsible for both product marketing, marketing and things like you see today, but also our customer care team and our continual support of our clients after they're installed. So I do get to experience a lot of different things. My career started a long time ago at IBM. I've always been in the technology business, the technology marketing business, and from there I was an entrepreneur, as you can see, and that's where some of the things on the slide came from. Really did a lot of exciting work with NABA, which some of you on the phone might have heard of, which is a great women's organization, and also with diversity. We obviously in HR know that diversity is a very key to building high-performance teams in your organization, and still today, even at ePay, we try to build a highly diverse team. So I'm glad that I can continue that work as I've gone on with my career.
And Michelle, feel free to jump in as we're going through the slides and some of the takeaways and findings, because you're the one who's really out there with customers sort of day in, day out, and I know you've got a lot to share. The term integrated HCM we throw around a lot, but I wanted to be sure that everyone knew what we were focused on today. And really, the core of this is that we have a single HR system that handles a wide range of HR processes. And this stands in contrast to the idea of having, separate software from several vendors, or I shouldn't say several, perhaps many vendors. So, for example, you might find in some organizations they say, oh, we went out and we bought an applicant tracking system for recruiting people, and then we got an onboarding system from somebody else. Of course, we've got our payroll and core HRS data, and then we've got a learning management system and a performance management system, and our comp people have bought some comp software, and you can just imagine what that is like. These days in HR, really everything we do, there is some module or other, some technology or other that is associated with what we do. Nobody in the HR function is not intimately connected to some aspect of technology. So the challenge is that if you end up with a whole lot of separate modules, you've got a big management challenge. And so people have been very attracted to this idea of an integrated system where everything talks to each other, common interface, dealing with just one vendor. Which, and Michelle, you mentioned you've been involved in the technology space for a while now. What's your thought on the sort of evolution we've seen from, I guess, standalone packages to integrated systems?
Well, it definitely, even just a few years back, people were looking at what we call point solutions in our industry language, where they were looking for the best of breed in time and attendance, best of breed in recruiting and applicant tracking, best of breed in learning management, and so on and so forth. But in the last, I'd say, 18 months, in just the last 18 months, we've seen a very fast change. And the landscape has moved to more of companies are reaching out very quickly and disrupting what they have today and looking for a solution that can really touch on almost everything here on the page. Not necessarily every single thing, but at least the key ones that are important to them. And what they're finding is what you're going to talk about today, the definite advantages of it. But it has been a very quick shift. It hasn't been gradual.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think we're now entering an era where HR people have been through sort of several generations of software and are more sophisticated in their understanding and explanations. Now, one thing that you brought out to me is the importance of hourly workers when we were doing this research. And the reason why I think software and integrated software matters so much to companies with a large hourly workforce is simply due to the costs that come with such a large volume of people. One of the most dominant areas of this is in recruiting, because typically we've got large numbers of people and high turnover. So if you do not have a nice, efficient, effective recruiting software integrated into your HCM, that gets expensive. Similarly, when you're onboarding all these new hourly employees, again, it's both the cost, but it's also the quality of the onboarding process. If you don't have a nicely automated system in place, quality of onboarding goes down, and once that goes down, then there are all kinds of real business costs. So interestingly, it's the hourly employees where I think a lot of HR professionals are saying, hey, here's where I can get the big win with quite measurable outcomes that very clearly pay for the software that we've just bought. Michelle, let me ask you about that again, because you're the one who really brought to my attention this impact on the hourly workers.
Sure. In my travels, as I meet with different CEOs and vice presidents of HR and so on, the biggest thing that seems to be the hurdle is getting good talent, even in the hourly workforce, even at the janitorial or service industry where you're paying someone $10 an hour. They would say, we might have somebody interested, but for a dime, they'll switch to my competitor and take a job there, and I've lost them. And in today's full employment type of situation, it's hard to get good people. It's hard to get people working for you, and that's their product, and especially in the service industry. And the same goes in manufacturing and so on. The competition for talent is intense. And so that makes your recruiting even more important. And you need to have tools that help you recruit people. Now, in the hourly workforce, you don't always use the regular job boards, that we talk about in the white-collar workforce. And that's okay, because now we have the technology can help us use more, things like Craigslist or other type of local job boards or job boards that tap into the military, things like that, or veterans, that can help them recruit those people, but then also keep them on the line, keep them talking to them with automatic emails and automatic SMSs going out to your candidates and saying, I got your application, we'll be right in touch with you right away. And they don't lose them, and that's what a lot of executives really like about the recruiting piece, is that it helps them compete for this precious talent. Needless to say, it's crucial in the onboarding. Many of our clients, they look at turnover at a minimum of 100% a year. 100% a year, that's a lot of applicants. In some service organizations, they're going up to 200% a year turnover. So they have fully dedicated people, out in the field just onboarding people all day long. With paper and more paper, sending it up to headquarters, getting background checks done, and all this stuff. And, that doesn't have to happen anymore with automation. It can be made a lot easier.
Now, you've heard about us. I want to move on to our first poll. And, Kathy, maybe you can throw that up and talk us through it.
Yes, the polling is now up on the screen, so please submit your responses. We'll give it a few more seconds. And what percentage of your workforce is hourly? Less than 10%, 10 to 24%, 25 to 49%, 50 to 75%, or greater than 75%?
I see people are pretty fast on getting the numbers in. That's great.
And David, do you see the results?
Yes, I do. And we've got a nice distribution, but it's a little bit bimodal, where we do have organizations, such as professional service firms, where the vast majority of people are white-collar salary workers. But we see, most organizations. The biggest number there is that 50 to 75% of hourly workers. And so you can imagine that in those organizations with that many hourly workers, making sure that whatever talent management technology you're buying, you're considering the hourly as well as the white-collar workforce. And particularly if we include the blue bar below that, we think, most organizations have a big enough hourly workforce that's got to be part of their consideration. and by the way, I should say that integrated HCM is entirely relevant also to a workforce that is 100% salaried. It's just that I think historically we've been overlooking the importance of hourly workers in talent management, and I think that's what's changing. And when we look at technology, we have to look at both sides. Why don't we move on to the next slide? All right. Well, we did a study here, a survey of HR.com members. So we got a large number of different organizations, and we wanted to know about what their findings were in terms of their experiences in using an integrated human capital management system. And by the way, you can get this the full white paper from HR.com. So if you need that, we can easily get that to you. But here I just want to pull out some of the highlights. And to me, the very first question I want to ask, and I imagine any of your line managers, is, yeah, this integrated thing, like, does it work? Are people who get it happy with it? And we've got a pretty high satisfaction rate. 2/3 were satisfied or very satisfied with it. And we have a very small dissatisfaction rate, right? Only 5% weren't happy. So, to me, the takeaway there is that you're pretty safe going into getting integrated HCM. The people who have done it say it works or it really works. We get pretty positive responses. Michelle, you're right in the midst of this. What has been your experience with client satisfaction?
Yeah, exactly what you're seeing here. I would say 99% are pretty thrilled about the idea of, only having to enter employee data once, new hire data in the beginning, and having it flow throughout the whole system from applicant tracking to onboarding into payroll and time and attendance and so on. So you also hear stories, I don't have to enter data into my payroll system and then go again and enter it into my benefit tracking system. It's all connected. So that's really the big wows that we're hearing back from clients.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the lessons learned later on, but you think, well, what are those people, those 5%? And those are often due to poor implementations, on occasionally people just picking a bad vendor, and that does happen. And when we get into the second part of some takeaways, we'll talk about that a bit more fully. But we're saying people are happy. You've listed some of the benefits, Michelle. Now here's what people responding to the survey said. These were the top benefits, and the first was easier access to employee data. It was just faster and easier to get and maintain that data. Simple administrative stuff. You're not going to tell your spouse about, it's just great how easy it was to access employee data, but in the day-to-day life of an HR department, you're not wasting time. It's that efficiency that really pays off. Another really important thing is data accuracy, and honestly, one of the big issues that HR can have is that if you report information to your management and it's not accurate, you really undermine the credibility of the whole function. So, it's not just, well, of course, data accuracy is a good thing. It's also fundamental to the credibility of the HR function, and it's that credibility that will allow you to do the things you want to do, beyond managing the transactional work, which of course is essential. But you get the accuracy wrong, and it's going to come back to bite you when you say, here's something I think we should be doing to create a learning organization, and if you don't have that credibility, you're not going to be listened to. The finance people will be very interested in point number 3. It's lower administrative headcount, and it all depends on the scale of the organization, but and what you had before. But because of the reduced data entry, you're not doing repetitive data entry that Michelle was talking about. You can have very specific, measurable headcount costs where people are not wasting their time doing data entry. We get better accountability because employees can be entering their own data. And finally, it's interesting, one of the things that people specifically pointed out in their top 5 benefits were consistency of paid practices right across the organization. So, these are the things, one, that you can expect. 2, if you're trying to justify why we should do this, those are some of the big selling points. And third, after you have implemented and you want to demonstrate that in fact this has paid off, this has been a good investment, that we're on track, these are some of the things to look for, so you can go back to management and say, well, this is what we are expecting, this is some of the information we had in terms of our state before the integrated HCM, here's our state now, and hence we can demonstrate that HR has made a responsible business decision and effectively implemented this software. Anything to add to that, Michelle?
No, I think obviously the CFOs do love the idea of lower administrative headcount, and folks are seeing not necessarily have to reduce the headcount, but can redeploy HR folks into working on more employee engagement type of activities. So out in the field, instead of that HR rep out there onboarding people all day long or all weekend long or whatever it is, they can now get their time back. Also, with automating, that's the onboarding piece, but also in the timekeeping piece. So often, folks out in the field, the operations folks, are out there spending their Sundays getting ready for payroll, approving timesheets, getting them submitted, and then exporting that file from their time and attendance system over to the payroll system. And then the poor payroll lady's got to deal with all that coming in. And so there's a lot of, for the operations people, there's a lot of administration on the time side. So those are the 2 areas where we see the headcount is either reduced or redeployed to work on more, like I said, employee engagement type of programs, and helping the employees really just get more in tune with the organization, different types of programs and things like that, instead of more of the mundane work that now we can automate.
Now, those benefits are things that primarily HR cares about and also the CFO cares about, but I think anytime we're implementing this kind of system, we have to look at all stakeholders. So that's one of the things we looked at in the survey, is are your stakeholders happy? And again, for your typical employee, their HR system is not top of mind, but nonetheless, we had very high satisfaction, or at least neutrality, from employees and from managers in terms of their satisfaction with the system. So it's always disruptive when you put in a new system. When you're asking for a self-service, you're getting people to do more interacting with the system than perhaps they did in the past. But people are very successful in satisfying their stakeholders with an integrated HCM, and only a small number of implementations sort of go wrong, leaving managers or employees dissatisfied. Now, I always like hearing the specific commentary we get from people, and so, for example, it's interesting that at first you wonder, well, are people going to like this? And you say, well, not only do they like the functionality, but as soon as they have functionality, they want more. Second comment on the top row is quite a few people mentioned mobile access, and by the way, they mentioned that you'll see in the bottom line for managers as well. So both employees and managers, people are explicitly mentioning that in this day and age, they love mobile access. The third comment on the right top, very important, is that different employees react different ways. So there are some who are going to be the resistors, and then you've got the enthusiasts. So just be ready for a wide range, I guess, of reactions. Not everybody's going to react the same way. So you're going to get a bunch of people who are happy, you're going to get a few complainers, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you address the complaints people have so that everyone feels listened to. Clearly, managers, love doing things online. Paper seems so obsolete these days. And maybe the most important thing is the middle comment at the bottom, which is managers asking for data. Because if they're going to make talent decisions based on data, they're going to be making better decisions. And, that's not just an administrative saving. Now we're getting, better quality people or better quality use of our talent due to the fact that managers are paying more attention to data about people. Did any of these comments strike you, Michelle, or anything else that came out of the study?
No, they're really pretty much right on. Obviously, mobile access is key, too. The employees do love to be able to look at their paychecks or make changes in their dependents, things like that, mobily and have that, and have all that information at their fingertips. It's also nice, these aren't employees, but these are applicants and candidates. They obviously like to be able to talk to you using their phones, their smartphones, especially in that hourly workforce. They may not have a PC at home. So definitely the mobile piece we're seeing more and more and more and more. And everything that we do now is mobile ready and can render on a smartphone. So those are pretty much the same type of comments that we see from our clients.
That's great. All right, now here's the one thing that really surprised me is I thought for sure that people who use an implementation partner would say we're more satisfied because we brought in this extra expertise to help us get it done right. But in fact, the numbers are very close in terms of the median level of satisfaction between the people who use an implementation partner and those who implement themselves. And in fact, it's even a little bit higher for those who implemented themselves. So I'd say, notice, by the way, in both cases, people were pretty satisfied with their implementation. So we're dealing with high satisfaction anyway, but it's just not, there's no consensus on whether you need an implementation partner or not. And so that's something I think to look on case by case in terms of your own expertise, and what kind of maybe implementation partner is available to help you. Going into this, I would have told you that you should definitely look at using an implementation partner. Now, sharing this data, I think it may not be necessary. Clearly, many people have been very happy when they've done it themselves. And Michelle, you must see this all the time. Did this result surprise you?
Yeah, I don't really think in today's world with many of the vendors out there, including ePay, you really require an implementation partner. I will tell you, though, what I think is the secret sauce to a successful implementation, and that's having a champion at the client company. It needs to be driven from the top, obviously, but then there needs to be a champion that is really leading the effort and is driving the deadlines and the dates, continuous status meetings and checkups and reporting into the executive team, and everyone understanding that this is a company initiative and we are going to get it done. And this is how we're going to do it. Very clear communication like that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't include all different departments. Absolutely, you should have meetings so all departments, when their department's being affected, and you're now implementing their area, such as payroll, or maybe you're implementing recruiting, they need to be a voice. They need to be very much a part of it. They need to be working through their processes, changing their workflows, because things will change. But you got to have that top-down type of authority, and you need to have that champion at the client side leading the project who meets regularly and is involved with the executive champion at your vendor, or I like to call your partner, having a regular communication between those two champions, driving the project forward.
All right, so let me just summarize the trends. Satisfaction was high and very few were dissatisfaction. The top two benefits were easier access to employee data and better data accuracy. We also had very high stakeholder satisfaction, which I think is really important. Some of the commentary focused on people liking mobile, liking online access to data instead of paper forms. And an implementation partner is not necessary. People who had them tended to be happy. People who didn't have them tended to be happy as well. It depends on your own situation. Now, just before we get to our second poll, I wanted to remind people that we'll be answering questions at the end of the session. We've got a couple of questions, but feel free to enter your questions as we go. But I'm going to put you back to work again. And Kathy, can you call up that next poll for us?
Polling questions now up on the screen. What module would you most like integrated with your HCM? Recruiting, training, compensation, or financial data? Please submit your response.
And it's interesting to see these numbers coming in. And of course, I think ideally everything is integrated. Sometimes you have to make a choice, and so it's interesting to see what the priorities are. And something maybe we'll talk about a little bit later in the takeaways is what people were most disappointed that they hadn't integrated. So we'll get to that takeaway in a moment.
David, the responses are on the screen.
All right, well, a pretty clear answer here is that recruiting is really what people want. Does that conform with your experience, Michelle?
Definitely. Definitely. That's probably the biggest.
Yeah, and of course that ties into our original theme that in particular these kind of integrated systems are great when you've got a big hourly workforce. What I'm pleased about is that quite a few people talked about financial data because the world we're going to is a world where we're not just having HR information in isolation, but we're looking at financial and operational data, because when you combine the two, that you really begin to get insights into sort of how effective the organization can be. And when you talk to people, if this were an analytics webinar, not a technology webinar, we'd be talking a lot about getting value from integrating HR and non-HR data, and I can see people are sort of ahead of me on that in identifying, quite a few people are saying that's something that they're looking for. All right, so we gave you the top findings. Let's talk about the top takeaways from the study. Let's start with number 5. And this was, beware of the temptations of customization. It can be difficult and is often unnecessary. And it's easy for me to say that it's often unnecessary. That's not what your users may be telling you. They'll be telling you, oh no, it's got to be this way, and this is how we do things. And if you talk to a vendor, you say, well, is it possible to do this customization? Then they'll say, well, yeah, it is possible. There's an extra cost involved, but we can do it. And so very often you're feeling, well, users are saying that we have to have it this way, and this is how the company works, and we're unique, and all these kinds of things, and so we really better do it. The vendor is saying it's not impossible, it can be done, and so you end up doing it. But the kind of comment that we got is shown at the bottom of the screen. I'm just going to read it out to you because I thought it was a great comment. I wish we had really pushed back on customizing the system, because that makes integrations and upgrades that much harder to do. Our customers were so used to homegrown systems that they wanted the same functionality in the integrated HCM system. Now, by the way, vendors, and I'm sure Michelle would be saying this to you, is that there's a difference between customization and, Michelle, that other word is configurability. Configurability, there's an awful lot you can do to configure the system to meet your own needs. All right, so it doesn't mean that you're taking a plain vanilla product. You take the standard product and you configure it so it fits the needs of your organizations. But that's sort of built into the software, so when you're doing upgrades and integrations, that all works, lickety split, not an issue at all. But it's when you say, no, I want to go beyond what's available with the configuration, and you say we want doing custom things, and more often than not, it's a headache and just not necessary. You're better changing the system, changing your process rather than customizing the system. So I've taken a fairly strong stance on that based on what I've heard from our participants. Michelle, do you have anything you want to add to that, to add some subtlety to that?
Yeah, the first comment is right on. It makes it difficult to do upgrades. with most of the HCM solutions out there today, they're SaaS-based, and so the technology is constantly improving, and everybody's getting the new releases. If you've made huge customizations, you have to test every release, and it's not an easy project. So yeah, I would definitely try to find the best solution that fits the way you guys work, and try to avoid customizations if you can.
So that's a good, I think a really good, really practical takeaway that we got from the study, and you know, stick that one on your wall if you're going to be doing an upgrade to an integrated HCM, or really any kind of software. Here's another thing that's somewhat related, but you know, ensure the processes are well designed and be willing to alter processes. You know, we always say that you know, you shouldn't be sort of paving the cow paths, right? So if you've got some wandering, meandering, inefficient process, technology is not going to fix it for you. And so it's a fantastic opportunity when you're implementing a new technology to also say, well, this is a good chance to look at our processes and see if they're really doing what we want them to do. And I think it's foolish not to take a look at your processes when you're doing this, because processes tend to get overly complex over the years. They can become outdated because things have changed so much, but that's just been the way we're doing it. And you're going to get better value out of your technology investment, significantly better value, if you've got good processes. And here's a comment, you know, we use the transition to simplify our internal processes. I love that word, simplify, you know, rather than trying to make the system fit our processes. Michelle?
You'd be surprised how many people will bring on a new system and they want us to retrofit it to their old processes, that, you know, the way they've done their business for 5-10 years, their pay cycles, what their hiring managers do in the field. They refuse to rethink it through and try to build a process that's best of breed. Quite often, a lot of the technology that's out there is built on best-of-breed practices. You know, maybe not 100% of the time, but remember, your vendors see a lot of clients, and they usually build to best practices. So be willing to take a look at your processes. Make sure you fit that into your implementation schedule so that you have the time, because the vendors are usually pretty good at executing and rolling out. It's usually what slows down an implementation is the customers really having to internalize and redevelop and refine their processes and get the acceptance out there, that cultural change, the behavioral change, and all that. That's really, I think, the biggest issues people face with new HCM systems. Usually vendors are pretty good at getting the stuff done.
Yeah, and you know what, that's a really interesting point, and I'm seeing this in different areas, is how much intelligence and understanding of HR, I guess, is embedded in the systems these days. Your vendors do know a lot, and you know, they have looked at a lot of different organizations. And so it's not just that they are a vendor who has like a database or some transactional system. They're now a group that is actually very expert in various HR processes, and you can benefit from that. And sometimes we don't see them that way. We think that's the role of consultants. But I think often you'll find that vendors have deep understanding of HR on par with, you know, your typical management consultant. All right. I told you that what people regretted. One of the big regrets was leaving out recruiting and onboarding modules. So, you know, people got a pretty integrated HCM, but they didn't bother to get recruiting and onboarding, and then after the fact they said, that was our mistake. We should have gone bigger and got those two modules in as well. Let me keep moving forward, because I want to make sure we have time, Michelle, for you to talk a little bit about what you've been doing, particularly with ePay. So let me go right to takeaway number 2, and that is over and over again. This is one of the biggest lessons learned that our survey participants wanted to share, was take the time to carefully plan and execute the implementation. And it almost sounds blasé. Well, of course we're going to plan, of course we're going to be careful. But everybody's saying, yeah, we knew we should plan and we knew we should be careful in the execution, and yet even though we knew that, we didn't spend enough time planning, we didn't take enough care in executing, we were trying to do things too fast. And this is really a case of make haste slowly. Now, it doesn't mean that this is an incredibly drawn-out, tedious process, but don't aim for speed, aim for quality, and in the end you'll get to a happy result faster. And another important part of this is, in essence, the risk management, because the worst thing that happens is that if you roll it out too fast and then something goes wrong and something is not working. Now, I'm up here in Canada, by the way, and the federal government introduced a new payroll system, and they didn't read takeaway number 2. I'm sure if you asked them, do you know it, they would say, oh yeah, we know. And they end up in a situation where all kinds of people are not getting paid correctly. That is just a total misery, and make haste slowly. Do it right the first time, and you're not going to have these terrible headaches where something is going wrong. So I like this idea. We set up semi-flexible deadlines by region. Okay, so we do have deadlines, we do have a plan, we are pushing to hit these milestones, but if we're not going to go live until it's ready, and we're going to make sure we're managing our risk by having these sort of semi-flexible deadlines, because we're absolutely going to get it right. And that worked well for them. The comment on the right is saying that we should have slowed down. Focus on key module at time versus moving fast. And there are so many comments like this. I've just pulled out 2 here, but again and again, people were saying, we should have talked to more stakeholders. We should have done more testing. We should have been less ambitious in terms of what we were going to, get out right away. And this is just sounds mundane, but it is absolutely what people who've done this are warning you about. Just take it slow, methodical, and then you'll have a really, really happy end result. Michelle, you do this all the time. What can you share?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend a good paced implementation. You can do things in phases. Some people start with applicant tracking and onboarding and get that phase done first. Others decide to move payroll over first. It just depends on what's going on at your company. But we do recommend a phased approach, not a big bang approach. And again, good careful planning with the stakeholders in each department is critical.
All right, well, let's go on to the number 1 takeaway, which is to invest heavily in identifying your needs. So that's kind of the first part of it. We really need to be clear about what you're trying to achieve. And again, this gets back to communicating with stakeholders as well, because what one region needs or what one division needs may not be the same as the division you're in needs, or the division you're most familiar with needs. So you want to make sure that you've really done your due diligence in understanding that. And the other one is choosing the vendor who best can meet those needs. And I said there are this 5% of people who are unhappy, and I think this is one of the main reasons they're unhappy. Either they weren't clear what they wanted, or else they picked the wrong partner. And if you get the wrong software for what you need, then no matter what you do, it's not going to work out. So, by the way, it's going to be so much more pleasant for you if you pick a vendor you work well with. So not just the technical capability of the software, but you know them. They've demonstrated they've got good customer service. They've demonstrated that they understand your organization. And that's just going to make everything so much nicer for you, and also so much more successful as you roll it out. The comment on the left, they looked at over 10 vendors. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to people who look at 2 vendors. and they did their due diligence. They did reference checks. They spoke to other clients. And even then, they say, look, nothing is easy, but it did work. And I think that's what I really like that is that, again, this is not just a tick-the-box exercise. It's something you take quite seriously, and you work hard at it to really understand what was going on with those other clients, really dig in the reference checks to understand what people liked and didn't like, what was hard, what was easy, what their actual needs were, because their actual needs may not be the same as your needs. But put the effort, and it really will work. The comment in the middle, study requirements of the different HR areas. Again, lots of different stakeholders, different needs. And if you don't understand what people need, then you're going to end up with some unhappy users. You're not going to get the results you need. And the last comment is, again, sort of about stakeholders. We should involve more folks in the regional offices. All right, so do your homework, and then you'll be on the path to a successful implementation. So that was the #1 takeaway. And let me just go to the summary of takeaways, and I'm going to give Michelle, here's the summary. What else would you like people to walk away with?
Well, the one thing on your last slide that came up is don't be afraid to ask for multiple demonstrations from your top vendor or top 2 vendors or whatever. So what I like to do when I'm involved in a customer, we'll do a first overview type of demonstration, so everybody say, yeah, this is kind of working or not working, we'll move forward. But again, what I had said is it's okay to ask for multiple demonstrations. So you might have first an overview demonstration, but then you might go into smaller demonstrations with the specific departments. So do one focus on applicant tracking and onboarding, do another focus on payroll, another one maybe on performance management or whatever. It helps, and that way you can start to see if it's a really good fit in each of the departments and what kind of workflow changes you might have to make.
All right. Well, let's, Michelle, we're going to get to the Q&A, but I did want to make sure that we just, let's just step through, because I know you had some things to share here. So you just talk me through which slide you want to see, because, this is where you've been working for, a good number of years. So what do you want to share with the participants today?
Sure. If we can go to the next slide, I'll just give you a little overview of ePay. We have been in the HR, human capital management space since 2001. We specialize in delivering a SaaS-based solution to employers of the, I would say, hard-to-manage, on-the-go hourly workforce. Typically, our client base is large hourly workforces. Obviously, always have some salary, but they tend to be employers that are distributed across multiple states. Some of their folks are going from job site to job site, customer to customer, maybe remote and so on. And it can be pretty hard to track and hard to manage type of a workplace, not only from a time and attendance perspective, but also from an onboarding and recruiting perspective. You're always dealing remotely. So that is our specialty. That's where we focus. Our legacy is really time and attendance. So we offer a full HCM solution. We got our start in the industry by offering a very uniquely flexible time and attendance solution that can really get a traction on what type, who's working at any one time, visibility into budgets and how you're doing against budgets, tracking over time. We really think that's kind of the heart of a good HCM solution, that if you can get a control of your labor dollars, then it's just gravy now that you can also get reduced administrative count in onboarding, in recruiting, can make things more efficient and more streamlined in terms of moving data through the system. But we do feel that, especially in that hourly workforce, you've got to have a very flexible time and attendance system that can handle anything from union rules to FLSA regulations and so on. The other big piece is we offer 24/7 support. And I can't encourage you more. to look at the type of support an organization is going to give you. You know, you deserve good support, and don't let anybody tell you anything different. You deserve someone to be there at 8 o'clock at night if you have questions and you're trying to run payroll at the very end and you need help, or you're trying to onboard somebody. 24/7 is important in today's world, and especially in most businesses. And you should be able to have the type of support that not only helps if there's a bug or a problem, but also if you just have a question. Hey, can you show me how to do this again? So look for that type of support. That's what we offer. It is at the heart of our business and everything we do. And because of that, we boast a 99% customer retention rate. On the next slide, you'll see really our full platform. So we offer a cloud-based or SaaS-based platform, everything from applicant tracking, human resource management, which includes our onboarding module, and your employee self-service and your manager self-service modules, along with good core HR functionality, benefit administration, that flexible time and labor management piece, payroll and tax management, and we've recently added a performance management piece. Much of it is mobile ready and self-service for employees so that they can get the information. And there's countless reports that are available both on the time and labor side and also on the payroll side and HR side so that you can get the information that you need. We offer full service, so we do for all of our clients. We actually outsource payroll. We run the payroll for them so that they don't have to do that and handle taxes. Of course, we have a very good ACA platform. Again, that's another piece of advice I'd recommend, is make sure your HCM vendor has a good ACA reporting tools and does the full filing for you. There's really no need for you to have to go to a third party when you're collecting everything you need to complete those forms right there in your HCM system, from the benefits, the qualifying information, and also the payroll and the time information. And then we offer a whole slew of other ancillary services. On the next slide goes into more detail. We're running out of time, and I really want to be able to get to your questions. But just some more detail. At the end, we're going to put up a slide with one of our upcoming webinars that I would invite you to come join us so that you can actually see an initial demonstration of our HCM platform. I'll be back with my partner, our sales engineer, and please just go to epaysystems.com and register. But a couple key things to remember about us. Again, it is a completely unified system with single sign-on. Got that robust time and attendance. That's, again, our legacy. That's really our specialty, along with superior tax management. So no more are your employees worried about, gee, are they taking out the right taxes? Or if I got employees that work in multiple states or work in one place in one state and reside in another, we can handle it. It's all handled in our onboarding system. So it's the same as goes on the back end when it comes time to pay those taxes. So those are just a few things that I'd like the folks on the phone just to kind of remember about ePay. Again, I think on the next slide we have the little promotion on our not on a webinar, but actually on a demonstration. So again, just go to our site and you can click on I'd like to see a demo, and we'll get to you right away. So do we have any questions out there?
Kathy?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Michelle. First question, are performance reviews part of an HCM software program? Are you able to track employees' goals throughout the year, which were outlined in the performance review?
Yes.
Yeah, in general, yes. Thanks, Michelle.
Not all.
By the way, Michelle, you're asking for what you do. You do, yes, and some others do. Not every system does. So that's you've identified a need, and when you're doing your due diligence and picking a vendor, make sure you pick one that delivers on that, because it's not universal, but it's not uncommon either. Next question.
Okay. Yes, Nancy submitted a question. Do payroll implementations need to be timed to go live at the beginning of a quarter?
Well, that's a good question. And Michelle, I'm just going to leave that one to you.
No. They do not. Everybody thinks they do, but no, they don't. A good implementation team on the vendor side, you go back and you pull in data on a monthly basis and you bring it into the new system. So you don't have to go live on the beginning of a quarter. A lot of people like to, but you don't have to. And guess what? In a good system, you're still only going to have one W-2 for your employees in January because all that data is going to come into the new system in the middle of the year, and you should have one W-2. At least that's the way it works for us. We have clients move over any month. In fact, I have a large client right now with over 4,000 employees, and they are moving over in November. So that's right in the middle.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Sarah. Does ePay Systems handle global payroll?
No, we don't. We are U.S.-based. But if you need some help there, please give me a call. I can help refer you out.
Alan has submitted a question. Do you do your own tax filings, PR payments?
Yes. We handle the tax filings for our clients.
Okay, another question. How do we convince management to invest in an integrated HCM?
Well, you're not alone there, but what we do is we'll do a very detailed discovery to try to understand how many hours you're spending in certain areas and how much headcount you have. So hours, headcount in onboarding, in recruiting, how much time you're spending. So we have some pretty sophisticated calculators, and then we can do a return on investment analysis and give that to you and even help present that to your management so they can see what you're actually spending today and some of the inefficiencies. So we do a hard dollars and a soft dollars analysis, and many times you can get that back. The other way too is there are parts of the system that can really help pay back. If you have a lot of hourly workers, if you haven't been taking advantage of work opportunity tax credits, you need to look at that. We can help you with that. That's free money from the government. When you employ people in specific segments of the population that are either on food stamps or welfare or are veterans. And you can earn up to $9,600 a year for somebody that is in one of those segments. So that starts to add up. That pays for a system. So there's different things that we can help you with and ideas we can suggest.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle. And we are at the top of the hour. And David or Michelle, do you have any closing comments?
Well, Michelle, thanks so much for your insights and your help on this. Thanks, by the way. We have got a bunch of comments as well, not just questions. Steve, for example, thanks for that. And just thanks for everyone to participating, and thanks to the people who completed our survey, which was the basis for most of this webinar.
Great. Thank you, David and Michelle, for presenting this very informative webcast today. The archive webcast and slides will be available on the HR.com site within 24 hours. You will receive an email from HR.com with the certification credit information within 1 to 2 business days. ePay Systems and HR.com do appreciate your feedback, so please take a moment at the very end of the webcast to complete the evaluation survey, which will appear on your screen. This concludes our webcast, and thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.